you, Shantan. I will send it to Shom. Yes, we are
Good
live now.
evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the team, Calcutta Comparatists 1919, I take this privilege to warmly welcome you to the 53rd lecture of the lecture series on this platform. Calcutta Comparatists 1919 is an independent forum for research scholars of humanities and social sciences. It carries the legacy of the academic study of Indian languages and literature as envisioned by Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee and introduced in 1919 at the University of Calcutta. Later, in 2005, a new department was established which continues to carry on with the research in languages. Calcutta Comparatists 1919 took inspiration from this history and it is a platform for sharing research interests and ideas. We are organizing online lectures on various interdisciplinary topics to be delivered by academicians and the distinguished research scholars of different fields. Your remarkable skills will be a valuable addition to our team. We look forward to a mutually beneficial relationship with you. Thank you for joining us today. Our speaker for today is Dr. Sayantan Mondal, and he will be enlightening us about working with archives, access, methodology, and other questions. A graduate from University of Hyderabad, Dr. Sayantan Mondal is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Gitam, Hyderabad, deemed to be university. His PhD thesis titled Transformations in Bangla Literature and Its Public Life, a comparative study of public sphere in colonial Bengal, looked into the transition in 19th century reading culture and its public life beyond the axiomatic frame of parlor and the streets by closely following the new professions and the formations such as literary societies or sabhas, publishing houses, and the new readers emerging from schools and households, on streets, in railway stations. Shayanton has been an Erasmus Mundus Fellow at the University of Oxford during 2015 and 16. He has authored articles in prestigious peer-reviewed journals, participated and organized numerous national and international conferences. His area of interest includes reading readership, 19th century literature, modern poetry and drama, Dalit studies, comparative literary studies, and translation. Welcome, Dr. Sayantan Mondal, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you
I would
so
like
much.
to hand over the mic to you now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dati. I would request Shompayan or Aratrika somebody to share the screen so that I can begin. Meanwhile, let me also thank all of you, particularly this young batch of researchers from Calcutta University Comparative Literature Department. I'm really glad to be part of this initiative. And this has been on the cards for a long time. I remember having a long conversation with Protein, one of your classmates, that he wanted me to talk about rather informally about my experiences of working in archive. So over the period of time, it got delayed, and fortunately, this idea also matured to me talking into he got me into the discussion of the different struggles of dealing with different sorts of documents. So today I will try to do that, and I'm very glad that this is I have been told that this is going to be rather an informal discussion. So I will keep my talk limited to 30 to 40 minutes, and I would look forward to your queries rather to address and go in detailed discussions. So with that, let me begin with today's discussion, working with archive, access, methodology, and other questions. Today's talk, if we go to the next slide, today's talk is going to be divided into 5 thematic or rather say steps that one might encounter, starting from going to archive, coming to the different practical aspects. So in these 5 sections, what I will try to do today is take you through the experience of entering and locating your archive and the different difficulties that one might face while having a training from the literature department and then finding oneself for research in the archives, dealing with not only the traditional forms of literature but different other forms. So how do we do with that? Deal with that. How do we do the research and maintaining its integrity and its significance? So with that, let me go to the first section, which is locating the archive, its access, understanding the corpus, and seeking help. The next slide, please. How do you know which archive to go to? Staying in Kolkata, most of you studying at the heart of College Street, you might know a number of archives already. Very close to you, though Calcutta University has its own archive, it has a wonderful collection of medieval manuscripts. Very close by, you have a little magazine library, which is no less than an archive. You also have Bongyo Sahitya Parishad, you have National Library. In Uttarpara, you have Joy Krishna Library. So you have many such archives. It is such a central location. But where should you go for your particular work? So that is one of the first question every researcher uh, faces with. So, and some clues about it you can get from your thorough literature review. When you do your literature review after getting into PhD, knowing your area, coming up with a proposal, your supervisor might suggest you to do a thorough literature review, might suggest you to read a lot of books, articles. So when you do that, you come across a lot of other researchers, your predecessors, who have worked in that field. And in those literature, you will find certain clues. They will mention certain archives that they have visited. Definitely, they will, if not archive, they will definitely mention certain files that they have consulted. They will cite them in the references. They will be reflected in the main text. They will be reflected in the footnotes and definitely in the archive material consulted list. So through that literature review, it is your responsibility not only to gather the argument, but also to trace and recreate a map of archive that will be relevant for your work. You need to know the file numbers, if possible, if that are given already in the literature that you are reading. Let me give an example. A number of you probably are interested and have already read on 19th century print productions and is already familiar with Anindita Ghosh's work. So if you go through Anindita Ghosh's work, she mentions a number of archival materials. So those are the pathfinders for you. Those are the landmarks that you need to take note of at the same time when you are taking note of the arguments that are going on in those pages, in those literature. So that will be directing you which materials you know. That will provide you with the specific knowledge about the files, which consult. Now, once that stage is done, what needs to be done is you need to do a thorough surfing over the internet to know what among those materials that you have already known relates to. What I mean to say, what other materials through your online research you can come across that can be seen as an extension to those files. Suppose you have come across 10 markers, 10 files, 10 names, but what else you can come up with to have an extensive list of files or an idea about your research can be helped by those files. Once that is done, the next step would be to locate which among them are available online. You would know that a lot of libraries are in the process of digitizing their collection and archives as well. British Library is doing a phenomenal project with Priyanka Basu being one of the person there who keeps sharing the research, and it is becoming available online very soon. The 200 years of print. So a lot of material are available online. CSSC, along with Heidelberg, has digitized a lot of 19th century literature, which is available online. Um, Endangered Archive project with British Library. Some of the faculties from Bengal, Jadavpur, and CSSC have collaborated and created a lot of digital documents which are also available online. So you can already locate before venturing out into the into the archives what all are already available within among the list of your necessary files, which is what are available online for you. So once that part is sorted, then you can come down to the rest of the files that you still require and they are not available online. Then you can pinpoint and plan which archives to go, where are they available. So this is the first process of locating your archive. And you need to also familiarize yourself at the same time with how to access those archives, that where you have to go and visit and work. What are the rules? Do you need to carry certain documentation for that? Would you be granted access to it just like that? So in most cases, you need a reference letter from your supervisor, your student I card, your research identifications. So those will ease your path, so that you need to take care of this minor details, so that you don't get obstructed suddenly and get surprised that I did not get that letter and I was denied permission from accessing the archive. So these are small things, but these are very important things, without taking care of which you cannot venture out into working into archives. It will be it will be an insurmountable problems that you will face otherwise. With that, let us move on to the next part of this discussion, into the next slide, which is, once you go to the archive, you might be flabbergasted with the materials, the plenitude of it, how to meander your way through it, how to work with your way through it. So the first thing that you need to know, that there are catalogs which you're already aware, uh, online catalogs, hard copies of catalogs depending upon the location of the archive and the facilities available there. But more importantly, there is a thing called index, almost in the same logic that you find at the end of the book, that title, letter wise, author wise. So different topic wise indexes are given at the end of the books. So every archive contain a few volume of index, which give you very quickly an idea of what all documents are there, and they also give you an idea that what are their file numbers. So before you venture out randomly into the archival material, just pick up things and start reading, perhaps it is a good idea to work your way, to spend initial couple of weeks consulting the catalogs and the index, pointing out more documents, from there that you need, taking a note of it, because ultimately whenever you would seek help, one question that you have to answer is which documents you are looking for. It is not always enough to indicate the area that you are looking into. You need to be specific which documents you're looking for. So to get that idea, to prepare yourself to answer that question, it is incumbent upon you that you consult catalogs and index while working in archives. And that's how you start your journey within the archive. Certain archives also have a nice and a very interesting, helpful collection of area-specific bibliography. And it is made by people like you who has worked in those archives for a long time. You probably are starting to work in archives in your PhD, but down the line, 10 years, 15 years, when you work on a particular field for a long time, you know the archive almost inside out. You know what are the documents that are available. You will probably memorize their file numbers also. So what archivists try to encourage that from researchers like you who have worked in that field, in that archive for quite some time, to present them, the archive, with a list of documents that they have consulted over a long period of time on a particular area. And those becomes a very significant, a treasure trove of help. It is not necessary that all the archives may have it, but a number of them do have this. So these are area-specific bibliographies by famous scholars who have already worked in those particular fields. So those are also very important beside the catalog and index. They can be also very helpful for you to have an idea of what all documents are there in that archive regarding which will help you in your research. The two other very important network from where you would draw your support is the first the experts, the archivists themselves. So senior faculty members who have researched on those fields, who have probably visited that archive many a time. You might come across their work. You might know them through the work, or you might just come across them while working in the archive. So meet them, talk to them, share your research, and seek help, seek guidance from them. Talk to the archivist, explain your struggle. Talk to them that what kind of material you are looking for. They can be of a lot of help. So without this help, finding your way in archive will be like navigating in an endless sea without a compass, without any sense of direction. So these are some of the things that you need to work into very, very carefully. And you cannot probably, you better not avoid any of them. And finally, peer group, knowing who all are working in the field. Not only in your university, but other naval university or even outside, whoever you would come to know who are working in those fields. Talking to them, knowing the kind of materials probably they have access to. So at times you would be in a situation where you do not have access to a number of materials, but the friend who are working have access to that material. So this peer group would not only direct you to documents, may provide you sometimes easier access to a lot of difficult to access documents. So these are the four directions that I would like to share with all of you. And I hope this will be very helpful once you enter the archive. This is the first thing that you should keep in mind and work. Now with that, let us move to the next part, which I have titled as training. And here I intend to talk about the interdisciplinary knowledge that you might require, the knowledge of the methods that you might require while working in the archives. Now, I would use a few examples to elaborate on what I'm trying to say when I say disciplinary location of documents. On your screen, you can right now see that I have a table there of information, I have a graph, and I have a chart. So these three documents, if you are familiar with the work of your friends who are studying in economics department, they are very frequently using this kind of documents. But it is not something that only students and researchers in economics use. You have to with something like this, and that would present your findings in a better way. On the other hand of it, how do you create this kind of data set? How do you come to it? Once you are working in archive, the expectation is that you will not be using secondary data. Your research will dig up archival materials and create primary data. So where will you, how will you create that primary data? How can you present your research in this kind of things? So the hindsight, the question is, the materials that you will be consulting, the documents that you will be consulting, you need to treat them as they are treated in their discipline. Let me bring here some examples. Let me take the examples of, let's say, legal documents. Suppose you are a student of literature and you have come across an act like obscenity laws or like registration act. Now, if you want to dig deep and see how obscenity laws or the registration act or the copyright act, this influence the publication of books, you need to not only know the act, but also need to peep into the police files and see how many arrests were made in this regard. All right. So only then you will know whether this, how effective were these acts, or else your argument will not be strong enough, will not be substantiated. So following up publication of literature, the trends, talking about acts like registration, copyright, which we very commonly use in the literature departments, you can get your substantiation of argument, you can get from the police files. But are you trained enough to consult the police files? What will you do? How do you, if I give you a police file, how would you read it? Can you even easily find the particular information that you are looking for, the arrests made under those acts? So you need to familiarize yourself with the police files, right? And you will know gradually that police files were recorded in the 19th century, at least in the archive, the way they are presented. It was recorded as annually. There will be 1 or 2 volumes of documents under every year. So, and they were also organized under the contemporary penal code. So the penal code list will be, it will be like an Excel sheet. There will be a penal code acts wise list on the left hand side, and the arrest made on date, and some details will be there in those police files. So gradually we will also know how to extract data from those files. Similarly, if I give you, let me take another example. If I give you the annual report of School Book Society, how to make sense of that document? You can read it, but how do you analyze School Book Society, Calcutta School Book Society, or Calcutta Vernacular Literature Society's annual report? What sense can you make out of the charts that you will find in those reports? How do you analyze those sales chart? So what I'm trying to say over here with examples of sales chart, police files, is that you need an interdisciplinary acumen. You need assistance at the level of doctoral committee, at the level of supervision. You need people to train you, to familiarize you what sort of precautions you need to take when reading certain kinds of file. Because a legal history expert from the history department will be able to tell you and guide you in a much better way how to handle the police files. A person from economics department might be able to help you in a much better way to make sense of the sales chart. They can point out where are the loopholes, or else you might take the document as it is. You might not see what the training from those disciplines would make you see otherwise. You would miss a lot of things that were otherwise visible out there. So though you will have access to those documents, the access will not speak to you properly until unless you question them from certain disciplinary locations. And this compromise cannot be made. That because of the fact that you're coming from the literature background, when you have decided to go to archives, when you have decided to go to archives and consult materials which are not only quote unquote literature, the standard form of genres of literature, but other files, you need to have a certain idea that documents are located in certain disciplinary positions, and there are discipline specific ways of analysis, and they can only help you to understand those documents better. Furthermore, what you need to do is not get overwhelmed by it, not get submerged into the knowledge that history department or sociology department or economics department might give you. But you need to balance yourself and your research by thinking, after extraction of those meanings from those data, what is actually relevant for your research? How much of those meanings, how much of those data can actually get transacted and translated into the research of literature? So this, I am calling it a cross-discipline transaction of relevance. So what sense an economics researcher would make of a sales chart, the same meaning, how much can you retain and accommodate in your thesis, in your research? So that will help you not to get overwhelmed, not to get flabbergasted by these new dimensions of knowledge that you have to tap into. But nonetheless, balancing it and also knowing it is very important. A compromise in this level would mean that though you have access to certain data, those data did not speak to you. You are sitting on a lot of data, but you are unable to extract the meaning out of it. And it takes time. It is not something that it will happen overnight. Seeking guidance, getting the guidance, then applying that, it will take a time, but everything falls into place over the period of time. So this is the next stage, I would say. Once you have entered the archive and you have access to your data, this is the training that one has to go through, and this is something that is very important and unavoidable. I cannot overemphasize it in any way. Let me move on to the next section. Now, this is more or less an extension of what I talked about, but there are a few other aspects that I want to make you aware, which is handling the documents and certain material specific analysis within your area of expertise. So let's go into it. Now, as you can see on the screen, I have a pile of tattered books, very old looking books, which is often the case in the moist, uncontrollably moist weather of West Bengal, which is the condition of a lot of old documents. They get into a very bad shape faster, and it is not a controlled, uh, condition that they are kept. So their condition deteriorates. You might order for a document in the archive, and what the archivist or the librarian may hand over to you is this tattered page, uh, somehow surviving, and you will be like wondering, what should I do with it? Should I read it? Should I open it? What I'm trying to say over here is respecting the condition of this. See, of course, digitization is the solution to this, and digitization will happen and is happening. That when you are actually handling documents physically, the real documents, you need to pay respect to their conditions, because you should always remember it is that amount of preservation and respect has already gone into it so that it can survive. It has survived a 19th century publication from 1840 1850. When you are accessing in 2020, it has survived how many, almost 180 years. Not always the quality of papers are good, but it has survived. That means enormous amount of investment of energy, financially, all sorts of energy has gone into its preservation, and also the people who have consulted these documents, like you, have shown a minimum amount of respect to it. So we should not jump into photocopying a written book and ruin it, so that next year this document will not be issued to anyone. In fact, your juniors who are coming to study in Calcutta University or other universities, the listeners are here from different parts, I am told. So when they will come, they will blame you that our seniors have ruined it because they wanted to have a photocopy of this document, and now it's no more issued because the book is in terrible condition. Some books, therefore, can only be read and noted down the important. You can note down the important points. So it is something that you should keep in mind, because it is your responsibility as a researcher who is demanding access to documents to take care of it as well. So please, use your discretion in treating those documents. You should not always, use flash cameras while dealing with old documents. You should consult the archive whether you are permitted to or not, because those also damage documents. So first prohibition could be of photocopying or scanning. Second layer of prohibition, depending upon the condition, could be of clicking photos of it. And third will be accessing. So please know your documents. If you cannot photocopy it, you still have two options. You can take down notes, you can click photos. If you cannot photocopy it, if you cannot click the photos, you can still take down notes. But do not try to steal your way through this process. This will endanger all those invaluable documents, and a whole new generations of researchers will be deprived of its access because they might not be even digitized anymore. Connecting to this, the next picture that you can see, a handwritten document. Now, if you are going back in time, researching on 18th century, even early 19th century British India documents, you would come across a lot of documents. If someone is researching on education, very close to your College Street campus, you have this higher education archive. So they have a very good collection of educational document related to education from 18th century, early 19th century, a vast record kept very close to your campus. So if you go there, you'll be surprised to see more than 60% of almost 60% of the collection of that archive is handwritten, because that's how the office work used to be. The reason I am drawing your attention to this is, how do you decipher what is written without proper training? Well, the answer to is that you will get used to reading it with some guidance. The archivists are there who are experts in reading it. So they will definitely help you if you ask for help to read these documents. And with time, with little bit of help, you will get used to it. But this is something connected to those tattered condition of the document. Most of these handwritten documents are in a very bad shape, and they cannot be digitized. They cannot be some of them cannot be scanned. So your only way through is to read through them. You will find lot of records related to education, as I have mentioned, handwritten. So that's the way to go about it. Now, coming to the final final two sections over here, the varied nature of documents and varying analytical methods. Now, this is where I am going to talk to you about something very related to your training as a student of and as researcher of literature. Now, all of you are familiar with genres, but the more you research, you will see how genre historically has evolved, how it traveled across the borders under certain influences, because of certain networks were forged, that certain genres have come. A lot of you a lot of us have grown up reading novels and knowing it to be one of the finest form of genre. We had such a wonderful plethora of novelists in Bengal whom all of us have read. But it was surprising for me to discover the 19th century resistance against novels. There were huge series of prohotion and natok uh, plays, even by one of them were acted by Rabindranath Tagore, which was initially called, I think, Olik Manush. So later published in a different Olik Babu, later published in a different name. So they were criticizing this middle class habit of suddenly reading novel, leaving across, leaving a lot of other educational genres that literature has to offer. So you would know that it was perceived as something that that target readers were household, not the students of universities, colleges. They were meant to be a thing that outside the boundary of education people can read, and it was a pastime thing, that reading a novel. Coming back, why it is so important is a genre changes its significance with time. Canons are made and then they're unmade. When you go into an archival research, what happens is we often at times judge documents, if not cautious, of course, anachronically. We start looking at a genre that a specimen of a genre that were published 100, 200 years before our time, and we start looking at them from the time we are situated. They can be completely misleading. Those ways, those lenses of looking at them can be often misleading. So that's why for every genre of every piece of document that you would work with, you need to know their location and how to read them in the context of your research, in the context of the time it was produced. This knowledge of the time and the relationship with the document and its relevance with your research is invaluable. It will help you from being, and finding anachronic results. It will help you from a lot of misjudgments, and it will also give you an idea what is the basic difference between historical importance and literary significance. A number of documents, let me give an example here. Quite often you will find in the works of, let's say, Tonika Sarkar, or in the works of, Anindita Ghosh, that they quote letters from a very famous person uh, relevant to the field of their research. Gauri Vishwanathan's work, Master of Conquest. So you'll find quotations from letters. Now, where do you get those letters? Some of those letters are part of the annual reports. Some of those letters were even published as an open letter in the old newspapers collections that you find. Now, how do you read letters? The fact that those historians chose to talk and cite letters does not mean letter has a granted attestation of authenticity. It does not mean that whatever is in the letter is authentic, it's true. Actually, very personal sort of writing. It can be very biased. It can mislead a researcher like us. Any one of us can get misled. So a letter can only be understood in the context of other letters or the things that were happening. Only then you can probably make sense of the letter. And make no mistake, those who have cited it, the names that I took, they have done that. They have done their homework, and then they have find which one to use, which one they can, finally trust and cite in their own work. So with these examples of books, of genres, of letters, I'm trying to say that when you go back in time, the sense of time, the relationship with the time and the production and the significance and the varying importance, how much trustworthy and authentic it can be, all these parameters need to be kept in mind. All these safeguards need to be kept handy so that you are not misled, so that you are not carried away in the joy of finding an old document, looking at an old document, so that you do not make false conclusions out of the documents that you have access. And only then you can probably create a data set from a proper understanding, from a correct understanding, from an authentic original understanding that will take the understanding, the scholarship on that field a lot far than just staying on the surface, compromising on different levels. So your data set can only emerge properly, and it will match your argument only if you keep in mind these safeguards, these aspects of dealing with different materials with their specific ways of looking into. All right, Champagne, if I can have the next slide, let me move to that. Now, this is the final, I would say, understanding that one would reach. It's a process that one has to reach, and it's not get it doesn't get always achieved in the PhD, but it is a continuous process. But it's get initiated, and I will also try to encourage today all of you who are starting to work in archives to keep these things in mind. So let me begin with the politics of archive. After all your research, locating your archive, accessing, training yourself, analyzing, you should come back and think of this once. And you should always keep yourself, aware of this politics. This is nothing but an awareness on three, four aspects. Who created this archive and on whose behalf? What purpose it meant to serve? What is missing from the archive? What I cannot find? And finally, why should we dig this up and talk about it now? What is the reason that I am suddenly doing it? So this will ground your research into the contemporary, literary, social, and other context. The awareness that you will know will open up the meanings for the meanings of the documents multifold. The awareness, when you know that who archived it, you will start making sense of the catalog and the descriptive terms used in those archives. If you go and consult the 19th century archive, excuse my use of 19th century archive because I'm familiar with that. That's why I keep doing it. So 19th century archive, you would know that there was one of the first cataloger of Bengali books productions was Reverend James Long. Now, Reverend James Long used a lot of descriptive terms which eventually were taken up by others. You would know that what we know as National Library today was one of the first earlier librarian when it was established as the Imperial Library. It was Parichad Mitra, Tekochad Thakur, that you would know. So they were using the same categories, descriptive terms to organize their books, to talk about it, used by James Long. So that was the legacy of Long that went on, carried forward. But those terms were also very, quality heavy. For example, a word like Musulmani Bengali, a word like Meli Bangla. So these are very, quality heavy descriptive term about languages, about which were impressed upon certain books, certain publications. And they eventually, with time, what happens that they start defining certain books. They start putting the literary production of certain communities in one bracket. We cease to see the other possibilities and meanings. So the awareness, who archived it, who wrote these descriptions, who cataloged it, would open up these meanings for you. What purpose it used to serve. When James Long was cataloging Bengali books, publications for the first time, his purpose was not to have a catalog in the library. His purpose was to report to the police commissioner about what is happening in the publication scenario. Bengalis seem to be publishing so much. There was a publication spree in 1840s, 50s, 60s. What are these people reading? So, no wonder that in 1870s beginning we had sedition law curtailing a number of productions. So that was the outcome. So now you know that what purpose those catalogs served. Those catalog was forming certain intelligence for the police, not meant for the researchers like you, though they are available now. But this also tells you about the 19th century publication scenario a lot. So this awareness, the purpose of certain document, why this document was made at that point of time, is helpful in more ways we can. And importantly, what has not been archived, what is yet to be archived, what are the documents that we do not have access to anymore, what was the reason that they were not archived, why they were not considered important. You might find a lot of importance in that. You might discover through your research significance of those documents. A lot of people these days are researching on the oral literatures that are available in Bengal. A lot of them are not archived. A lot of traditions have survived on performances and oral different forms of orature. So those stories, those practices, it is not that they were always invariably from the very beginning in that form. They could have also found a niche in publication scenario. They could have been published. The songs that the performer sings, the baul songs, a lot of them have been catalogued and published, but not all of them. Jari Gan, if you know, there is a plethora of oral literature. Why those have not been published? Why is people are still looking forward to publication of it, digitization of it, at least videographing the performances of it. Performances brings up other aspects to the meaning also, but you need to think about and questions that what was the reason that certain documents were considered unworthy of archiving. And there you will find more meanings that would help you to address the research necessary social context, meaning that your research will derive from those questions would help you to contextualize your research in the contemporary social questions that are being raised. And finally, to be sure that why are you looking into the archives? Why are you suddenly digging up these old documents? What compels you? Is it certain questions, research questions that are there in your proposal? Or is it certain trends in the research? Or is it certain pressure that is working? So these few things, four aspects that I am trying to mention, that I mentioned today, is more or less define the politics of archive. And I hope that this you will find them helpful, and this will also help you ground your research on a very firm footing. Let me move on to the aspects of ethics and certain romantic notions of archive, and let me try and dispel those notions. Now, this photo I just found, I was looking for something which would give you an idea that uh, the kind of joy that one derives when somebody finds a 19th century play that they were looking for a long, long time, could not get their hands on it in the Calcutta University library, could not get it through friends in Jadavpur. After long search and all, they have finally found it. Nothing wrong in such a pursuit, but the reason I am talking about this today is what happens after that. What happens after that is that document, because of the hard labor went into finding it, becomes so important that that importance, crosses the boundary and goes into its literary historical significance also. That document becomes such a famous discovery of your, it becomes, uh, you start owning the document in a way and get, you know biased about it, that the document that I have finally discovered is the document. This is the document that whatever it says is going to be useful. Your guards will fall down. All the questions that I have discussed so far, that different disciplinary understanding, all those things are there to help you save yourself from this kind of obsession. This is the discovery and its perils. It is a sad thing that you need to be cautious about a discovery that you have made after a long, haul. But this is a necessary precaution that you should all keep in mind. You cannot think that the thing that you have finally found is the ultimate document and nothing about it can be challenged. It can be possible that what you finally found is a pirated copy of the original book. It is fairly possible that what you have discovered is nothing but, let's say, a very unpopular work at that point of time, carries a historical significance. What is important, that not trying to overread it and find significance that are not there, but bringing out the significance that is already there. If you have discovered a pirated copy, that is the significance of it, that a pirated copy survived in the archive. And what does the pirated copy tells you about the time when it was published? What does it tell you about the culture of publications and book selling of the time? So the meaning, the significance will be there, and you cannot overlook it and take it to somewhere else. The other point this photo goes with is the first one on the screen, is the charm of the archive, the antique things that you find there, those old dusted books, the smell of it. You might get a dust allergy, but you still seem to have, we growing up in, Bengal, reading our books, seeing the old libraries, knowing College Street, we have this idea of a romantic idea of books and love for it. My point is, it gets worse when you go to the archive. You might get into a spree of taking everything that is there in the archive, whether it will be useful for you, whether it will be beyond your use and beyond your analytical ability. It doesn't matter. A lot of people start gathering a lot of documents. Let me gather this first, then I will sit peacefully and I will analyze and see which one I need, which one I don't need, but I will have a personal collection. Okay. The point is, the danger in that kind of practice, there is one technical danger and there is one serious literary scholastic danger. The technical danger is you might issue and block the document from somewhere who needs to access it immediately. Apart from that, the serious danger, the scholastic danger that I am talking about, is those documents that you have collected, if even if they are not directly related to your research, you might, out of the charm of it, you might, force it to fit into your research, and that can weaken your research. So you might stop questioning it because you found that in an archive that you had difficulty accessing, and finally you find it. It's an antique thing that you have found it, and somehow you need to accommodate it in your research. So you need to get beyond that charm of the antique. Not everything that is antique is significant. At least in terms of your research, not everything is significant. So you need to be judging yourself, your choice of the material. You need to inform yourself how to judge it and then do it. But definitely you need that process to take you beyond that charm, beyond that romantic notions of archive. So these two, if not taken seriously, will lead to a lot of problems in your research, which I would like to call analytical fallacies. You will overread it. You will read things that are not there. You will force meaning into it, and in fact, even there are forging and manipulation of the data. People not only read and impose meaning that is not there, people also fabricate certain data about publications. Let me give an example what I'm talking about in terms of manipulation and forging. Suppose you are dealing with publication trends. Suppose you are dealing with migration trends. So you would be dealing with a lot of charts, a lot of data, and you need to not only read them in certain ways, but you need to be honest while trying to fit the findings to your argument. If they do not fit it, that does not mean you need to change those digits a little bit and fit into your argument. You need to stay true to the documents that you have honestly analyzed. Not the meaning will not come out of forging, fabricating, manipulating. The meaning will definitely come out of staying true to the findings that the document has to offer. So be careful of these things. These are malpractices, and initiating your work into archive, you should be aware of it, and I would hope that none of you ever need to fall into trap of any one of this. So here is more or less what I have to offer. Protim, one of your classmates, had requested me to talk briefly about funding also. How do we get funding to work in archives? So that is there in the last page. The next one slide. So I would try to simplify it and give you a very general idea about it today. Of course, you can ask me further questions if you have. And with that, I will try to sum up today's discussion. So first of all, two things. There is funding for research, and there are fewer funding for archival research. So being a student of humanities or social sciences, you would struggle to secure funding for your research, and you will struggle more if you are looking specifically to fund archival research. However, there is no need to be pessimistic, no need to lose hope, get frustrated about it. Whatever research you do, if it is archival or otherwise, you need to always look for funding that general funding that can cover your archival visits, that can cover your other necessities also. And you do not need to keep in mind, because as you can see that only archival funding for archival research, funding of that sort, will narrow down your possibilities. So you can start with looking for funding for your research, for the grants that are given to PhD students. When you're looking inside India, there is this website. There is some issue with the sharing. So if you go to shodh.net, that is the name of the website, it lists out a number of at least around 20 funding agencies, Indian funding agencies that fund your research in India. that includes some of the science funding agencies also, but it does include some humanities and social science funding research agencies as well. So please look into that. Look into first of all, look into these government sources like UGC, MHRD websites, show.net. So you will get a lot of ideas where to approach. You would also should look into places like ICCR or ICSSR or ICHR. These are like the full forms of this will be like the committees that all India based committees that look into the researching sub-discipline specific areas, history, social science, philosophy. All of them have their own, they have their annual meeting, conferences. Recently Jadavpur hosted ICHR's annual conference, annual meeting. So your research at the research level, do not think that you disqualify being a student from literature. If it has sociological relevance, if it has historical relevance, if it has philosophical relevance, you can approach any one of these and they give you generous grants. They give you grants to support you throughout your research for 4 years. Like JRF, they provide JRF and SRF. They also provide small time grants to go abroad and stay there and do research. They also provide, some of them, ICSSR provides one-time grant to go and attend conferences. So you need to visit their websites, make yourself aware that when to apply. So planning is something is very important for any application process of funding. Application process of funding, be the Indian one or the outside India, the foreign sources. It could be from British Council, it could be from other societies. Every application process is a time-taking process. The application itself might end up looking 70, 80 pages at the end of the process. So you can think that how much time it should go into the application. It is undoubtedly very tiring, but it's a necessary evil that we have to look into. But to do it in a sorted manner, the only way, there is no shortcut to it, is familiarizing yourself by being tech savvy, by looking up these websites. You type it and in the Google and it will automatically lead you. You do not need anybody to give you the exact websites. You name those funding agencies, you will get those sources. You will look into the eligibility criteria, you would know which one you are eligible for. And you need to take note, what is the time frame? When do they call every year? Most of the foreign funding agencies, they generally give a call around, the submission time is around February, March, April, in this corridor. And you can start the process 6 months before, ideally sometime in September, October. So this is the time frame you should keep in mind, that whatever you are applying for, you need 5 to 6 months preparation. You need to, at times you need references from the foreign universities. They will love, are ready to host you. You need to get in touch with them. You need to provide a lot of other documents. So all that, you need 4 or 5 months of preparation. So knowing the time frame and planning is very important. That is what I would say, and I will stop here and have your questions if you have any. I hope today's discussion, I haven't bored you guys, though it was very general topic. It is not something very specific to my research that I do, but it is something that, as I have told in the beginning, Protim and other students, Aratrika and all, Champagne, have been requesting me for a long time. And I have been told that a lot of you are researching in archives. So I hope you find it useful in certain ways. Thank you.
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যারকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ আমাদের সবার সামনে এতগুলো তথ্য তুলে ধরার জন্য। স্যার, আমাদের কাছে কিছু কোয়েশ্চেন এসেছে, আমরা সেগুলো নিতে পারি?
নিশ্চয়ই নিশ্চয়ই।
আরাত্রিকা দি প্রশ্ন করেছে, আমি এটা শো করছি। I have been to archives in India where I came across documents that were in so much poor condition that those documents almost crumbled with the slightest touch. How can this kind of documents be digitized? Is more funding the solution so that these documents are preserved in the best way possible?
So, Aratrika, thank you for sharing your own experience. I can identify with your finding actually. The thing is, it has no straightforward or answer to it. The way I see it, I would say that it needs a proper scientific treatment, and that culture needs to evolve in the archives. It is not that our archives lack access to that kind of technology. For example, what you're saying, very brittle documents, how can they be digitized? So it's a process is first of all restoration. It needs to go through the two stages. First, it needs to be restored, and then the restored document can be digitized. That's the process. As in a layman terms, everybody understands that. Now, second question is, do we have access to restoration technology that can restore those documents? Of course, we have. Everywhere in the world, they are restoring old documents. They are preserving it in that way, and then they are digitizing. Now, the question that that you have already raised, that financial support. Do the archives have that kind of budgeting? Now, the more we are moving forward into future, we are seeing the budget is diminishing in the এডুকেশনের খাতে আর কি ক্রমশ কমে যাচ্ছে টাকার পরিমাণ। স্বাভাবিকভাবে আর্কাইভের বরাদ্দ টাকার পরিমাণও কমছে, বাট এমন নয় যে এই ধরনের টেকনিক্যালি কোনো প্রবলেম নেই। আই ডোন্ট থিঙ্ক দের ইজ এনি প্রবলেম। ইফ উই হ্যাভ দ্য ফান্ডিং, India is very well capable of digitizing brittle documents. It needs to go through the process. If you see the kind of digitization CSSC has done for, in collaboration with Heidelberg, it is available online in Savifa. So if you look it up, you will see the condition is very visible there. In fact, School of Cultural Text in Jadavpur, they are working on restoration of a lot of documents. So the technology is available. There is no problem. The problem is accessing that technology, making that available in the archives, financially supporting that sort of a system. That is what I would say. But all of it is available and doable.
আরেকটা প্রশ্ন রয়েছে, সেটা সুপর্ণা করেছে। সুপর্ণার প্রশ্নটা আমি শো করলাম। Can you elaborate on the ways of archiving digital platforms, like when a domain is gone, the website is gone, how can we possibly trace the history of the website or domains like that?
Right. Now, Suparna, I will give you one example, and then I will tell you about the platform where you can access it. See, the way I'm sure you know half of it already. The thing is that when we create a website or a blog, whatever digital platform it is, there are two ways. One, you purchase some domain, pay money for it. Another is free hosting. Now, it does not matter whether you have purchased a space or it was free hosted. All those links, website, everything you should be able to find it even after it is gone in this website called archive.org. I'm sure you are familiar with this part, archive.org. It is a very useful website for a lot of you. I'm sure a lot of you are already using it. So archive.org has also the metadata of all the digital domains of the world. So if you have lost, let me give an example here. There was a journal that one of your teachers and us, we used to run. So it was a journal of Indian comparative literature and translation. Now, after some time, we did not renew that domain, and for certain reason, technical and otherwise, it went out of use, and we lost access to it. But all the documents, everything that were published in it, all the conversation, everything you can access from archive.org, their metadata. So there is a place that is there. I am not very sure that how long archive.org preserved it, whether it is for life or not, but it is available for a considerable amount of time. Because as I can see from my experience, it was available there for 10 years or so. It's a 10-year, it is gone 10 years, and I can still access that website.
এই মুহূর্তে আর কোনো প্রশ্ন নেই, আর
Just
কেউ
to
কোনো
add,
প্রশ্ন?
something came up
আচ্ছা
in
আচ্ছা
my mind.
হ্যাঁ
If you are also looking for ways of doing it, so you need to also look into the engines that mine metadata. So metadata mining will be one place where all this will be stored. So not everybody does it. It is it is a logistical question. So wherever you have a metadata mining going on, so you will have all these websites, all your digital footprints, what we call digital footprints, everything stored there. So that is the technical term, I suppose. I'm not very familiar with the whole process. It's not my field, but from using archive.org's metadata, since I get it, I guess this is how you can, this is the process to preserve, to archive digital platforms.
আচ্ছা, এই মুহূর্তে আর কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন এখানে দেখতে পাওয়া যাচ্ছে না। আর কেউ কোনো প্রশ্ন করেনি? আচ্ছা, তাহলে আরাত্রিকা দির কাছে যাচ্ছি। আরাত্রিকা দি।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, থ্যাংক ইউ শান্তনদা। প্রথমেই ভীষণ ভালো লাগলো লেকচারটা, ভীষণই ভালো লাগলো। আর্কাইভ নিয়ে আমাদের অনেক বেসিক যে কোয়ারিজ আর কোয়েশ্চেন্স গুলো থাকে তুমি খুব ভালোভাবে ক্লিয়ার করলে। অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমাদের সাথে প্রতিমও এসছে, আমার মনে হয় প্রতিমের কিছু জিজ্ঞেস করার ছিল, কারণ আমরা দুজনেই ব্রিটিশ লাইব্রেরিতে কাজ করেছি, সেই ব্যাপারে প্রতিম একটু তোমার সাথে কথা বলতো। মানে আমারও আমাদের সেম কোয়ারিজই আছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি। প্রতিম যদি একটু অন হয়। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ প্রতিম।
আজকে আসার জন্য এবং বলার জন্য। আমাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, you are audible, you are audible. প্রতিমের একটু নেটওয়ার্ক ইস্যুস হচ্ছে আই গেস। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, একটু ফ্রিজ হয়ে গেছে। প্রতিম, you might just turn off your camera and try once.
হ্যাঁ, আর থেকে আমাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে। প্রতিমের নেটওয়ার্ক ইস্যুস হচ্ছে। আমি একটা কোয়েশ্চেন করছিলাম, হ্যাঁ তোমাকে, মানে এটা আমার পার্সোনাল এক্সপিরিয়েন্স থেকে। মানে ব্রিটিশ লাইব্রেরিতে কাজ করতে গিয়ে যে মানে যে এক্সপিরিয়েন্স গুলো হয়েছে, ধরো মানে দ্য ওয়ে দে আর সো মাচ অর্গানাইজড, আমাদের দেশে ন্যাশনাল আর্কাইভসে গিয়ে কিন্তু ওরকম এক্সপিরিয়েন্সটা হচ্ছে। বাট মানে বিভিন্ন রিজিয়নাল আর্কাইভস, মানে বলা উচিত না, বাট এত বাজে এক্সপিরিয়েন্স সেখানে, মানে স্টেট ওয়াইজ ডিপেন্ড করছে কি? এটা কি মানে স্টেট ওয়াইজ ফান্ডিং এর উপর ডিপেন্ড করে? মানে আমি ঠিক ব্যাপারটা, মানে হাউ দ্য আর্কাইভস আর ফান্ডেড ইন দ্যাট ওয়ে, আমাদের দেশে মানে গভর্নমেন্ট আর্কাইভস গুলো, মানে অবভিয়াসলি দে গেট আ সাবস্টেন্ট মানি টু, বাট এতটা প্রবলেমেটিক, মানে এক এক জায়গায় এক এক রকম ভাবে থাকছে, মানে এক্সপিরিয়েন্সটা খুব মানে ডিফার করে বিভিন্ন স্টেটে।
Right, I understand. Now, দুটো জিনিস আরাত্রিকা। প্রথমত, of course funding is an issue, and state wise funding can differ. কোন স্টেট কিরকম ভাবে তাতে কোন খাতে কত টাকা দিচ্ছে তার উপর ডিপেন্ড করে। আর দ্বিতীয় কথা হচ্ছে যে কাকে ফান্ডিং করছে, এটাও একটা বড় ফ্যাক্টর। কারণ তো সেগুলো তো একটা বড় ফ্যাক্টরই। আরেকটা যেটা আমি এটা এই ধরনের ফিনান্সিয়াল হিসাবের বাইরেও যেটা একটা বড় হিসাব থেকে যায়, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আর্কাইভের একটা নিজস্ব প্রিজার্ভেশনের কালচার আছে। নাও এই কালচারটাকে আমি বারবার নিজের কথা বলার সময় বলছিলাম যে সায়েন্টিফিক কালচার, যে আর্কাইভের ডকুমেন্টকে আমরা কিভাবে রাখবো, কিভাবে সেটা খারাপ হয়ে গেলে, ব্রিটেল হয়ে গেলে সেটাকে আমরা কি করে আবার সারিয়ে তুলতে পারি, তারপরে সেটাকে ডিজিটাইজ করতে পারি। না, এই কালচারটাকে সায়েন্টিফিক কালচার আমি বলছি, তার কারণ হচ্ছে যখন এটা এই ধরনের একটা প্র্যাকটিস, এই ধরনের একটা অভ্যাসের মধ্যে দিয়ে আর্কাইভ গুলো যাবে, সেটা কিন্তু জায়গা অনুযায়ী আর বদলাবে না, কারণ এটার একটাই ধরন হয়। হ্যাঁ, এটা সায়েন্টিফিক। যখন এই অভ্যাসগুলো আর কি সায়েন্টিফিক নয়, তখনই এগুলো আর কি ওই রিজিয়নাল স্পেসিফিক অভ্যাস হয়ে যায়, তখনই বিভিন্ন মানে অন্য রকমের কালচার এগুলোকে ইনফ্লুয়েন্স করতে শুরু করে। হ্যাঁ, কোথায় একটা মানে কিভাবে গুরুত্ব দেওয়া হচ্ছে, মানে তুমি যেটা বলছো যে ন্যাশনাল আর্কাইভস এ কাজ করেছো, তিন মূর্তিতে তুমি কাজ করেছো, তার মানে তুমি দেখেছো যে এক ধরনের মানে ইন্ডিয়ান এবং তুমি ব্রিটিশ লাইব্রেরিতে কাজ করেছো, তো তুমি দেখবে যে দুটোর মধ্যে বড় একটা তফাৎ, যদিও অ্যাক্সেস অর্গানাইজিং খুব ভালো হয়েছে, বাট ইন্ডিয়ান আর্কাইভ সিস্টেমে একটা বড় ধরনের বিউরোক্রেটিক জিনিসপত্র কাজ করে, যেটাকে পেরিয়ে মানে তোমার আর ডকুমেন্টের মাঝামাঝি একটা বড় বিউরোক্রেটিক নেটওয়ার্ক রয়েছে, যে ডকুমেন্ট তোমার কাছে আসতে গেলে ওই নেটওয়ার্ক দিয়ে আসবে, তোমার অনুরোধ ডকুমেন্টের কাছে যেতে গেলে ওই নেটওয়ার্ক দিয়ে যাবে, যেটাকে হয়তো টেকনিক্যালি সায়েন্টিফিক্যালি অনেক কমিয়ে দেওয়া যায়, যাতে তুমি সহজেই
হ্যাঁ, এটা লং প্রসেস, এটা টাইমিংও লং টাইম লাগছে সেটার জন্য।
এক্স্যাক্টলি। তো এটা একটা মানে what we need to do carefully, I think, cultivate a scientific temperament in these archives, নইলে খুব মুশকিল। মানে ফান্ডিং এলেও, ফান্ডিং এনশিওর করা গেলেও, যতদিন না এই ধরনের কালচার তৈরি হচ্ছে একটা, ততদিন অবধি রিজিয়ন ওয়াইজ ইট উইল ভ্যারি, ততদিন অবধি সেই ফান্ড উইল নট বি ইমপ্লিমেন্টেড ইন কাল্টিভেটিং, ইন প্রিজার্ভিং দিস ডকুমেন্টস।
আচ্ছা, থ্যাংক ইউ শান্তন দা। আর প্রতিম কি আছে আমাদের সাথে? সম্পান, প্রতিম কি আছে? আদারওয়াইজ উই ক্যান।
না, প্রতিমদার নেটওয়ার্ক কিছু একটা সমস্যা হয়েছিল, সেই কারণে প্রতিমদা অন হতে পারছে না।
ঠিক আছে। সম্পানের যদি কোনো কোয়েশ্চেন থাকে, আদারওয়াইজ।
না, এই মুহূর্তে আমার আর কোনো প্রশ্ন নেই। আমি প্রশ্ন যেটা করেছিলাম সেটা স্যার অলরেডি তার আলোচনার মধ্যে বলে দিয়েছেন। আচ্ছা, প্রতিমদা আরেকবার জয়েন হয়েছে।
আই থিঙ্ক প্রথমে কিছু সিরিয়াস কোয়ারিজ আছে, তোমার থেকে সত্যি জানতে চাইছেন, নেটওয়ার্কের জন্য বারবার সমস্যা হচ্ছে একটা। প্রতিম, তুই কি আছিস? আচ্ছা, প্রতিম তো চেষ্টা
করছে, আমি বুঝতে পারছি।
হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে, সেরকম হলে হি ক্যান কন্ট্যাক্ট ইউ লেটার। হ্যাঁ, he can maybe just drop you a mail, and এমনি আমাদের participants এর জন্য, if you want to contact Dr. Sayantan Mondal, you can feel free to be in touch with us, or you can contact with sir also. If sir is willing to provide his email ID, you can contact with him as well. And also একটা জিনিস যেটা মানে আর্কাইভস এর ক্ষেত্রে মানে they have মানে ইন্ডিয়ান আর্কাইভস এর কনটেক্সটে বলছি, মানে কোর্সেস বা এই ধরনের কি আর্কাইভস থেকে ডাইরেক্ট করানো হয়? মানে আমার কোনো আইডিয়া নেই, আমি তোমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করছি, মানে ফর বিগিনার্স
আমি
আর্কাইভ।
খুবই ইম্পর্টেন্ট প্রশ্ন। আই ক্যান আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড তুমি যেটা বলছো, যে অ্যাকচুয়ালি আজকে আমি যে সমস্ত কথা বললাম, এক ধরনের এগুলোকে নিয়ে একটা ওয়ার্কশপ করানো উচিত আর্কাইভ গুলো। ইট উইল হেল্প ইমেন্সলি। তুমি জানো, তুমি নিজে ওই আর্কাইভ কালেক্টিভের পার্ট, যাতে আমি আমরা চেষ্টা করছি এরকম একটা করার বাই দ্য এন্ড অফ দিস ইয়ার। অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমাদের এটা আগেই করার প্ল্যান ছিল, কিন্তু মাঝখানে এই প্যান্ডেমিক সিচুয়েশন হয়ে যাওয়াতে, আর ইউ ক্যান আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড কি আর্কাইভের এই ওয়ার্কশপটা অনলাইনে করা সম্ভব না, because you need
No.
to know the documents. So
Exactly.
once these things gets little normalized, little more things improve, we will definitely do it. Otherwise, let me also see the general scenario of this kind of workshops. এই ধরনের ওয়ার্কশপ হয়, মানে এমন নয় যে হয় না, বাট অসুবিধা প্রথমত হচ্ছে যে খুব একটা ফ্রিকুয়েন্টলি হয় না, আর হলেও সেটার খবরটা পাওয়া খুব মুশকিল। তো সেই জন্য দুটো ইনস্টিটিউশনকে আমরা সচরাচর তুমি কলকাতা থেকে ফলো করতে পারো। একটা হচ্ছে ন্যাশনাল লাইব্রেরি,
আচ্ছা।
আর দ্বিতীয় হচ্ছে তোমার যেটা পার্ক স্ট্রিটে রয়েছে আমাদের ইয়ে কি যেন নাম, I'm just forgetting the name now. Sorry,
Is this a
I can't
library you are
remember the
referring
name.
to?
I'm talking about যেখানে আর কি আমাদের এশিয়াটিক রিসার্চের এই সমস্ত জিনিসপত্র আমাদের
এশিয়াটিক সোসাইটির কথা বলছো?
Asiatic Society.
হ্যাঁ 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 হ্যাঁ।
So you can contact, you can follow and be in touch with Asiatic Society National Library,
Okay, okay,
and you
okay.
can also keep in tab with National Archives Teen Murti. So these three places might do a workshop of this sort. আমি পার্সোনালি জানি যে ন্যাশনাল আর্কাইভস আর ন্যাশনাল লাইব্রেরি এই ধরনের ওয়ার্কশপ করেছে এক সময়, বাট আমি রিসেন্টলি শুনিনি। বাট তুমি যদি ন্যাশনাল লাইব্রেরিতেও যাও ভাষা ভবনে, তুমি দেখবে ওই ঢোকার পরেই বাঁদিকে এই নোটিশগুলো থাকে পুরনো হলেও, যে ওরা কবে এই ধরনের ওয়ার্কশপ করেছে। তো you just need to keep in touch with them, maintain it, so that the যখন এটা হচ্ছে ইনফরমেশনটা তুমি পাও। So it is a problem that it does not মানে এটা সব সময় পাওয়া যায় না ইনফরমেশনটা। আর খুব ইন্টারেস্টিং হচ্ছে ব্রিটিশ লাইব্রেরি যেখানে তুমি কাজ করেছো বললে, ব্রিটিশ লাইব্রেরি ওয়েবসাইটে তুমি যদি দেখো, ওরা কিন্তু অনলাইন ট্রেনিং এর ব্যবস্থা করেছে।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা আচ্ছা।
So you can try and access those things, and ব্রিটিশ লাইব্রেরি ওয়েবসাইট খুবই হেল্পফুল, তোমরা সবাই জানো অনেক কিছু অনলাইনে পাওয়া যায় ওতে। কিন্তু time to time ওই ওয়েবসাইটটাকে ভিজিট করতে থাকা, you will discover a lot of things, but there is a training program also that they conduct.
Okay, thank you so much for this information. আমাদের viewers আর participants এর বলি, আমার আগেই বলা উচিত ছিল যে Sayantan is also member of co-founder of Archive Collective. এটা 2019 এ ফর্ম হয়েছিল, and I'm lucky to be a part of this amazing group. And I hope কি আর্কাইভ কালেক্টিভ থেকে আমাদের আরো অনেক আর্কাইভস নিয়ে রিসার্চ করা হবে বা সেমিনার্স ওয়ার্কশপ করা হবে। and please stay in touch with us যদি আর্কাইভ কালেক্টিভ নিয়ে আপনাদের আরো কিছু জানার থাকে। and thank you Sayantan da for this amazing evening today. Shompan, if you want to join in.
এইখানে প্রতিমদার বোধহয় একটা প্রশ্ন আছে।
আচ্ছা,
প্রশ্নটা হচ্ছে প্যান্ডেমিকের পর archive.org এ আর্কাইভের শিফট আস্তে আস্তে ডিজিটাইজেশন কি আমাদের ইন্ডিয়ান প্র্যাকসিস আর্কাইভ গুলোকে ধ্বংস করে দেবে না? এটা প্রতিমদা জিজ্ঞেস করছে। প্রতিমদা কানেক্ট হতে পারছে না, কিন্তু এটা প্রতিমদা জিজ্ঞেস করছে ইন্টারনেটের সমস্যার কারণে।
প্যান্ডেমিকের পর
archive.org এ
ডিভিশন কি আমাদের আচ্ছা, আমি যতটা বুঝতে পারছি প্রতিমের প্রশ্নটা, ইফ আই এম আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং হিম কারেক্টলি, প্রতিম বলার চেষ্টা করছে যে যে এই ডিজিটাইজেশন হচ্ছে সেগুলো কি ফিজিক্যাল আর্কাইভকেই ধ্বংস করে দেবে কিনা। তো প্রতিম এটা একটা মানে এই উত্তরটা একটা প্রফিটিক উত্তর আর কি, মানে ভবিষ্যতে কি হতে চলেছে, কি হবে। বাট আমার মনে হয় না যে যে এটারও কোনো আর কি ওরকম সহজ আনসার হয়। কারণ প্রথম কথা দেখো, ডিজিটাল আর্কাইভ ইজ অ্যাকচুয়ালি ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট। কারণ তোমরা নিজেরাই বুঝতে পারছো যে যে ধরনের অ্যাক্সেসের সমস্যার দিয়ে একজন রিসার্চারকে যেতে হয়, যে একটা ডকুমেন্ট খুঁজলে আমরা পাচ্ছি না, ডকুমেন্টটাকে লোকেট করা গেলেও সেটাকে অ্যাক্সেস করতে অসুবিধা হচ্ছে। তো ডিজিটাল আর্কাইভ এই ধরনের সমস্যার অনেকটা সমাধান করতে পারে। দ্বিতীয়ত, ডিজিটাল আর্কাইভ এর প্রিজার্ভেশনের পদ্ধতি অনেক আলাদা হতে পারে। হ্যাঁ, এবার এর মধ্যেও কিছু অসুবিধাও থাকতে পারে। Digital archive can be also very expensive. Digital archive can ask you to act money for accessing a document. তো এরকমও হতে পারে। বাট কি হবে, কতটা প্রাইভেটাইজেশন হয়ে যাবে এই ধরনের জিনিসপত্রগুলো, সেগুলো খানিকটা আমাদের রাষ্ট্রের নীতির উপরেও ডিপেন্ড করছে। আর যেভাবে আমাদের ইকোনমিক মানে জিনিসপত্র আর কি গড়াচ্ছে, মানে একের পর এক হচ্ছে, তাতে এটা বোঝা যায় যে ক্রমশ প্রাইভেটাইজেশনের দিকে সবকিছু এগিয়ে চলেছে। তো এরকমও হতে পারে যে আজকে আমরা যে ডিজিটাল আর্কাইভের কিছু কিছু জায়গাতে অ্যাক্সেস করতে টাকা দিতে হচ্ছে, কালকে এরকম হতে পারে যে তুমি যে আর্কাইভগুলোতে সহজে যেতে পারো, যেগুলোতে তোমাকে টাকা দিতে হয় না, তুমি ফিজিক্যালি অ্যাক্সেস করতে পারো, সেগুলো অ্যাক্সেস করার জন্য টাকা দিতে হতে পারে তোমাকে। তো ফিউচারে হবে সেটা প্রেডিক্ট করা খুবই মুশকিল। তবে শুধুমাত্র যদি তোমার এই প্রশ্নটা থাকে যে ডিজিটাইজেশনের জন্য ফিজিক্যাল আর্কাইভই ধ্বংস হয়ে যাবে, আমার মনে হয় না। কারণ ডিজিটাল মানে আমি পার্টিকুলারলি একটা জায়গা থেকেই বলতে পারি, যেটা আমি খানিকটা বুঝি, সেটা হচ্ছে বুক হিস্ট্রির জায়গা। সেটা হচ্ছে যে মেটেরিয়াল কন্ডিশন অফ আ প্রোডাক্ট, মানে সেটা কি জিনিস দিয়ে তৈরি, পাতার কোয়ালিটি, বাইন্ডিং, these things are also very helpful in telling us about books. মানে এটা তোমরা নিজেদের অভিজ্ঞতা থেকেই বলো, মানে একটা পাইরেট করা বই আর একটা মানে সো কল্ড এস্টাবলিশ পাবলিকেশন থেকে বেরোনো বই, দুটোর মধ্যে তারতম্য, মানে গুণগত তারতম্য কোথায়, মানে সেটা তুমি তো ডিজিটাল কপি দেখে বুঝতে পারবে না। তো আমার মনে হয় যে যেহেতু অনেক কিছুই চোখের সামনে বা না ছুঁয়ে দেখে বোঝা যায় না, সেহেতু এই ধরনের মেটেরিয়াল গুলোর গুরুত্ব বরাবরই থাকবে, এবং সেজন্যই আর্কাইভের একটা গুরুত্ব, ফিজিক্যাল আর্কাইভের গুরুত্ব বরাবরই থেকে যাবে। বাট হ্যাঁ, অ্যাক্সেসের দিক থেকে ডিজিটাইজেশন would go far way. It will not only help, it will be accepted everywhere. আমার মনে হয় অ্যাকচুয়ালি ন্যাশনাল লাইব্রেরি ইজ ডিজিটাইজিং all its collection. Alipur National Library is digitizing all its collection at least in last 10 years, if I remember correctly. 10 বছর ধরে চলছে সেই প্রসেস। তো আরো কবে শেষ হবে জানি না, বাট everybody is digitizing and it is the norm of the day. And I hope কে শুধু ডিজিটাইজেশনই নয়, এটার অ্যাক্সেসও প্রোভাইড করা হবে সহজে সবার জন্য।
হ্যাঁ, প্রথমে একটু কটা জিনিস অ্যাড করেছে যে কারণ আমাদের রিজিওনাল আর্কাইভ গুলো এমনি উদাসীন। ভুবনেশ্বরে আমি গিয়ে দেখেছি দে ডোন্ট ইভেন হ্যাভ প্রপার প্রসেস টু কিউরেট এভরিথিং অনলাইন। সরকারি উদাসীনতা তো থাকেই, তার সঙ্গে আবার ডিজিটাল সিনে যেভাবে কপিরাইটের ইস্যু আসছে, তাতে অ্যাক্সেসটা আরো বেশি প্রাইভেট প্রপার্টি হতে চলেছে। তো
এবার আমি নট শিওর প্রতিম তুমি ভুবনেশ্বরের কোন আর্কাইভের কথা বলছো। এবার এক্ষেত্রে আমি এই জন্য বলছি এটা যে কালেকশনের ক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু আমাদেরকে অনেক সময় যেটা দেখতে হয় যে ন্যাশনাল আর্কাইভ কে তুমি কাজ করছো বা বঙ্গীয় সাহিত্য পরিষদে কাজ করছো, বাট একটা সময়কে জানতে গেলে তোমাকে অনেক সময় প্রাইভেট কালেকশনকেও দেখতে হয়। যেমন আমি প্রথমেই এই উদাহরণটা দিচ্ছিলাম যে লিটল ম্যাগাজিনের যে লাইব্রেরিটা রয়েছে, এটা তো একটা প্রাইভেট কালেকশন। বা তুমি ধরে নাও তোমার কাছে যদি এখন শোভাবাজার রাজবাড়ির যে নিজস্ব লাইব্রেরি, সেই কালেকশনটার দরকার হয়ে পড়ে, বা তুমি জানবে যে টালিগঞ্জে সাবর্ণ চৌধুরীদের যে পরিবার, তো তাদের নিজস্ব একটা ছোট মিউজিয়াম এবং আর্কাইভ ওরা নিজেরা করেছেন। তো উনি অনেক বইপত্র ডিজিটাইজও করছেন। মানসবাবু ওনার নাম, উনি খুবই মানে ওয়েলকামিং। আমি বলবো তোমাদের সবাইকে যেতে, তোমরা অনেক কলকাতা প্রথম দলিল এবং সেই নিয়ে পরবর্তীকালে হাইকোর্টের কেস, তোমরা হয়তো জানবে যে বেশ কিছু বছর আগে কলকাতার জন্মদিন ধরা হতো 26শে অগস্ট, যবে নাকি জবচানক কিনেছিলেন, বেঁচেছিলেন। তো সেটা কলকাতার জন্মদিন না কলকাতার জন্মদিন নয়, এটা নিয়ে একটা কেস হয়। তো তখন কিছু ডকুমেন্ট এনারা আর কি তুলে ধরেন, যে জন্য সেই কেসটা থেকে কলকাতার কি জন্মদিন 26শে অগস্ট নয়, এই সমস্ত ডকুমেন্টস, কলকাতার পুরনো ডকুমেন্টস এর একটা বড় কালেকশন কিন্তু সাবর্ণ রায়চৌধুরীদের উত্তরাধিকাররা যারা আছেন তারা প্রাইভেটে রেখেছেন। এবার এরকম এগুলো জাস্ট কয়েকটা আমি যেগুলো উদাহরণ দিলাম, এরকম অসংখ্য লাইব্রেরি রয়েছে যেগুলো প্রায় মানে দুষ্প্রাপ্য বইয়ের কালেকশন, বাট সেগুলো প্রাইভেট কালেকশন। অ্যান্ড এই প্রাইভেট কালেকশন গুলো কোনোভাবেই সরকারি অনুদান পায় না সবসময়। চেষ্টা চরিত্র করলে হয়তো পাওয়া যেতে পারে, বাট সবার কাছে সেই পদ্ধতিটাও পরিষ্কার নয় এবং পদ্ধতিটা সহজ সরল নয়। তো আমি শিওর নয় তুমি ভুবনেশ্বরের যে আর্কাইভের কথা বলছো সেটা এরকম প্রাইভেট আর্কাইভ কিনা বা সেটা সরকারি আর্কাইভ কিনা, আমি ঠিক শিওর নয়। বাট হ্যাঁ, এটাও ঠিক যে সরকারি আর্কাইভেও অবস্থা জেলা এবং তুমি যদি রাজধানীর কথা বলো তো খুবই পরিষ্কার। তুমি যদি এখন হুগলির আর্কাইভ বা বর্ধমানের আর্কাইভ গুলোর অবস্থা দেখো, কম্পেয়ার টু কলকাতার আর্কাইভ, তাদের অবস্থা বেশ শোচনীয়। তোমরা জানবে যে গৌতম ভদ্র ন্যাড়া বটতলায় যায়, খবর তোমরা হয়তো পড়েছো অনেকেই, এবং তোমরা জানো সেখান থেকে যে উনি কিন্তু শুধু ন্যাশনাল লাইব্রেরিতে বা কলকাতা সেন্ট্রিক জায়গাতেই বসে রিসার্চ করেননি। ওনার রিসার্চের একটা বড় সাধন এসছে কিন্তু হাওড়া এবং এই কলকাতা পার্শ্ববর্তী জেলার ছোট ছোট লাইব্রেরি থেকে, আর্কাইভ থেকে। তো এই আর্কাইভ গুলোর গুরুত্ব অসীম, কিন্তু একটা হায়ারার্কি থাকে জেলা এবং রাজ্যের রাজধানীর মধ্যে। তো ফান্ডের মানে বিতরণ পদ্ধতিটা আর কি সেই হায়ারার্কি মেনেই হয়তো হয়। তো সেই জন্য হয়তো বা অন্য কোনো কালচারের জন্য, অজানা কারণের জন্য একটা তফাৎ থেকে গেছে মেনটেনেন্সে। যে সামান্য সুবিধাগুলো আমরা এই রাজ্য সেন্ট্রিক জায়গাতে পেয়ে থাকি সেগুলো সবসময় জেলার আর্কাইভিস্টরা পান না, আর্কাইভ যারা ব্যবহার করেন তারাও পান না। তো এইগুলোর একটা বড় সলিউশন হয়ে যাচ্ছে সেই জন্য, এই ধরনের অব্যবস্থার জন্যই হচ্ছে প্রাইভেটাইজেশন। প্রাইভেটাইজেশনকে আইডিওলজিক্যালি অনেকেই আমরা এটার বিরোধ করি, বাট এই ধুঁকতে থাকা আর্কাইভ গুলো আর কি খানিকটা প্রাণ ফিরে পায় যখন আর কি এই ধরনের আর কি প্রাইভেটাইজেশন থেকে হঠাৎ করে খানিকটা আর কি টাকা এতে ঢুকে পড়ে আর কি, মানে the last way. I hope I have answered your worries, not question but rather your worries.
Thank you, Shantanda. Thank you so much. If you don't have any question, we can move towards concluding the session. Shompan?
হ্যাঁ, প্রতিন্দা ওইতে আরেকটা বলছিল, এবং আর্কাইভ কালেক্টিভের মতো তৃতীয় কোনো মঞ্চ আলাদা করে কিছু ভাবছে নাকি?
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা,
আমরা এখন দেখো নিশ্চয়ই মানে যত বেশি এরকম ভাবে প্ল্যাটফর্ম তৈরি হয় তো খুবই ভালো। আমরা চেষ্টা করছি আর্কাইভ কালেক্টিভ থেকে একটা এই ধরনের প্ল্যাটফর্মকে ফেসিলিটেট করার, যাতে তোমরা যারা যেরকম রিসার্চ করছো আর্কাইভ নিয়ে, তো তোমরা কি ধরনের ডকুমেন্ট রিসার্চ করছো, কি তোমাদের অসুবিধা হচ্ছে, তো সেগুলো তোমরা শেয়ার করতে পারো, যাতে একে অন্যের কাজ সম্বন্ধে আমরা জানতে পারি। এটার একটা বড় প্রয়োজন। মানে এরকম প্ল্যাটফর্ম খুব কম আছে যেখানে আর কি একজন রিসার্চার নিজের কাজকর্মের কথা, আর্কাইভের কথা শেয়ার করতে পারে। এটাও একমাত্র এখন যেভাবে আর কি এক্সিস্ট করে বেশিরভাগ ক্ষেত্রেই সেটা হচ্ছে ব্যক্তিগত চেনা পরিচিতির এই মন্ডলী থেকে যায়। তো আমরা চেষ্টা করছি এক ধরনের অনলাইন প্ল্যাটফর্ম ফেসিলিটেট করার আর্কাইভ কালেক্টিভের থেকে, যে তোমাদের মতো রিসার্চার, পিএইচডি স্টুডেন্ট যারা এই মুহূর্তে আর্কাইভে গিয়ে প্রতিনিয়ত রিসার্চ করছে, তো তারা নিজেদের কাজ সম্বন্ধে কথা বলতে পারে, তারা নিজেদের স্ট্রাগল সম্বন্ধে কথা বলতে পারে, তারা নিজেদের প্রয়োজনের কথাগুলো তুলে ধরতে পারে। এন্ড আমরা প্ল্যাটফর্ম প্রোভাইড করা ছাড়াও আমাদের যেটা চেষ্টা থাকবে, ওয়ান্স দিস প্ল্যাটফর্ম থেকে এই ধরনের আপডেটস আসা শুরু হবে, যে এই ধরনের প্রয়োজনগুলোকে আমরা কতটা অ্যাড্রেস করতে পারি। আমরা যারা কাজ করেছি এর আগে আর্কাইভে, আমরা যারা খানিকটা ট্রেনিং পেয়েছি, তো ওয়ান্স দিস কাইন্ড অফ প্ল্যাটফর্ম ইজ ফ্লোটেড অ্যান্ড ইউ গাইজ স্টার্ট sharing your inputs, we will also try to address them, and future platforms can be built upon those information, those necessities. তো আপাতত আমাদের প্ল্যান এটাই। তো দেখা যাক, আমরা জাস্ট শুরু করেছি। We are still very few of us. We will try to achieve this and facilitate this kind of a platform.
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার, অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ। অনেকটা সময় আমরা পেরিয়ে এসেছি। আমরা আরাত্রিকা দিকে বলবো এখন ফর্মালি লেকচারটা শেষ করার জন্য। আরাত্রিকা দি।
Thank you, Shantanda, for this wonderful evening. On behalf of Calcutta Comparatists 1919 and its members, I'd like to convey our hearty thanks to Dr. Sayantan Mondal for his excellent lecture on the topic of archives. A big thank you to you, Dr. Mondal, for sharing your ideas and views on this area. I would like to express our gratitude to you for responding to us and coming to our forum. We are really inspired by your words, and thanks to all the audience on YouTube for being with us today. We officially conclude this session now. A very good night to you, and also stay tuned and visit our website calcom.org and subscribe to our YouTube channel for further updates on our next lectures. And also, once again, thank you, Shantanda, for being with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.